Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a nutrient that is, absolutely essential. It's critical for everything from vision to your immune system. But, and this is a big but, it also comes with a pretty serious warning label when you're talking about supplements. We are diving deep into vitamin A.
It's a really fascinating topic because, vitamin A is one of those very few vitamins where the line between enough and a genuinely toxic overdose is, well, it's alarmingly thin, especially if you're just relying on supplements. The whole key to safety is understanding how your body handles the different forms.
Absolutely. So our mission for you today is to cut right through that confusion. We want to help you understand the supplement labels, figure out why some health programs use it so aggressively, and most importantly, set that clear, non-negotiable ceiling for safety so you can avoid something called hypervitaminosis A.
And that ceiling you mentioned, that's really the central challenge. You've got to balance this vital need for the vitamin with the very real, very serious risks of toxicity. And that means you need precise knowledge of the different forms, which we'll get into, and you have to track your total daily intake from all sources.
All sources. So food, fortified stuff, and the supplements themselves.
Everything.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If you look at vitamin A supplements, you don't just see one ingredient. Our sources make a really clear distinction between two types. So what are they, and why do they have such, wildly different safety profiles?
Right, you have to split them into two camps. I like to think of it as the high-potency path and the self-regulating path.
I like that. That's a great way to put it.
So the first one's preformed vitamin A. Chemically, these are known as retinoids, so that includes retinol and retinol esters. And on a supplement label, you're going to see names like retinol palmitate or retinol acetate.
And preformed just means it's ready to go. The body can use it instantly.
That's exactly right. It requires very little processing. And because it's so potent and directly usable, it gives you a really predictable effect per dose, which is useful in a clinical setting. But that's also where the danger is. Your body has a limited capacity to deal with it, to process it, and store it safely. If you flood your system with too much of this preformed vitamin A day after day, that leads directly to a higher risk of toxicity, hypervitaminosis A.
So that's the powerful high-risk twin, the one we have to be really careful with. So what about the other one, the safer twin?
That would be the provitamin A carotenoids. These are the compounds that come from plants. They're what make foods so colorful. Beta-carotene is the most famous one, of course, but there's also alpha-carotene and beta-cryptoxanthin.
Ah, so the stuff in carrots, sweet potatoes, kale.
Exactly. They are precursors. The key word here is convert. The body has to actively convert them into the usable form, into retinol. And what's so fascinating is that this conversion process, it's really variable. It depends on your genetics, how much fat you ate with your meal, and even whether your body's vitamin A stores are already full.
So the body has a kind of built-in safety switch when it comes to carotenoids. It won't make more than it needs.
Precisely. You can think of it like a self-regulating valve. If your vitamin A stores are low, your body opens that valve up and converts more carotenoids. But if your stores are full, it restricts the flow. It dials back the conversion. This is why you can eat a huge amount of carrots and maybe, your skin turns a little orange.
Right, carotenemia.
Yes, which is harmless. But you won't get acute vitamin A toxicity. It makes it virtually impossible to poison yourself with carotenoids from food.
That's a huge distinction for anyone listening. Okay, so I've noticed a lot of multivitamins, they'll actually combine both. They'll have retinol palmitate and beta-carotene in the same pill.
They do, and that's exactly why you have to become a label reader. That combination means you've got to track both parts. You have to think about your total retinol exposure, which is the direct retinoid dose, plus whatever your body might convert from the carotenoids. All of that counts toward that safety ceiling.
All right, so that brings us right to the numbers. The intake levels, the upper limits, all of that.
Yes, let's define them. We need to talk about the minimum you need, but more importantly, that non-negotiable ceiling. And we measure this in something called RAE, or retinol activity equivalence. That's the gold standard unit now.
So what's the daily target for just, basic health?
For adults, it's generally about 900 micrograms of RAE per day for men, and a bit less, 700 micrograms of RAE per day for women. That's the target zone.
And the ceiling, the number you keep calling the non-negotiable limit.
That's the upper limit, or UL. And the general upper tolerable intake for preformed vitamin A is 3,000 micrograms of RAE per day. This ceiling is absolutely critical. It's the point where long-term chronic toxicity hypervitaminosis A becomes a really serious risk.
3,000 RAE. Okay, we need to burn that number into our minds. But let's clarify something. most people are still going to see the old unit on labels, international units, or IU. How do those two compare?
That's a vital point, because it causes so much confusion. IU is outdated, but it's everywhere. The simple way to remember it is that 1 microgram of RAE is roughly equal to 3.3 IU of preformed vitamin A. So if you see a label that says 10,000 IU of retinyl palmitate.
Wow, okay, so you do the math. That's basically 3,000 RAE in one single pill.
Exactly. You're right at the maximum safe daily limit before you've even had a bite of food.
And that really underscores that the 3,000 RAE ceiling is for all sources combined. Food, fortified milk, plus that capsule?
Correct. And that margin for error just disappears in certain situations. I mean, if you have liver disease or you're on a therapy like isotretinoin for acne, which is a vitamin A derivative, that intake control has to be incredibly tight. It needs a doctor's supervision.
So let's talk about the food side of this. Where do we find these different forms on our plate?
The preformed high-potency vitamin A, that comes from animal products. Liver is the most famous source. It's incredibly high. But also fortified dairy, eggs, fish liver oils. A single serving of beef liver can easily have more than 3,000 RAE. It would just blow past that UL instantly.
Which means if you're someone who eats liver even once a week, you absolutely do not need a retinoid supplement.
You definitely do not. And then the provitamin A carotenoids, the safer path, they come from all that colorful produce. Carrots, spinach, kale, sweet potatoes, apricots. A varied diet full of those colors isn't just good for you in general. It's your best and safest strategy for vitamin A because of that self-regulating conversion.
We've made it pretty clear that routine high-dose supplements are risky and probably unnecessary for most people in developed countries. So when is supplementation actually a good idea?
The benefits can be profound, they can be life-saving, but only when it's targeted. We see two completely different contexts. The first and most critical is the global health context.
This is where vitamin A deficiency is a massive public health problem, right? It can lead to things like blindness.
It's a huge intervention. Public health programs use these targeted high-dose vitamin A supplements for young children in areas where deficiency is common. And it is a dramatic, life-saving tool. It prevents childhood blindness. It reduces deaths from severe infections. It helps with growth. The benefit there just vastly outweighs the risk.
That really puts it in perspective. In that context, it's an essential medicine. But for someone in a developed country with access to good food, taking that same massive dose isn't life-saving. It's
potentially dangerous. And that's the core paradox. In developed settings, supplementation has to be tailored. It's for specific individual risk factors, things like diagnosed malabsorption or specific eye conditions. A clinician might assess your blood levels and prescribe a dose, but that's a medical intervention. It's not something you just pick up off the shelf.
This is where the data gets so interesting. The key takeaway seems to be that the incredible benefits of vitamin A supplements depend entirely on targeting a deficiency. For the average well-fed person, that supplement aisle is probably more of a toxicity risk than a path to better health.
We really should spend a minute on those risks because they're substantial. We keep saying hypervitaminosis A. This is what happens when you chronically go over that 3,000 microgram ceiling. Early on, it might just be headaches or nausea, but the chronic effects are serious. We're talking liver strain, bone changes, even neurological problems. It's a state of chronic poisoning.
And there's a very specific warning about one of the forms we originally called safer beta-carotene.
Yes, this is so important. Beta-carotene from food is safe. But there were landmark clinical trials that used high-dose beta-carotene supplements. We're talking 20 to 50 times the recommended daily intake. And they found an increased risk of lung cancer and death in certain people, specifically smokers and former asbestos workers.
Wait, so taking a huge isolated dose of a carotenoid, even though the body self-regulates it, actually caused harm in smokers?
It did. The exact mechanism is complex, but it seems that megadosing a single nutrient outside of its natural food matrix can disrupt things, especially in people with existing stress on their lungs. It just highlights that more is definitely not better with these synthetic supplements.
Let's shift to interactions. Vitamin A is fat soluble. What does that mean for us practically when we're taking it?
Being fat soluble means it needs dietary fat to be absorbed. So you should take it with a meal that has some fat in it. But on the flip side, if you're taking medications that block fat absorption, like orlistat, or have certain medical conditions, you could actually become deficient because you're not absorbing it properly.
And what about drug interactions that can increase the toxicity?
The big one is any medication that's related to vitamin A itself, or anything that puts a strain on the liver. We mentioned isotretinoin. That drug is a powerful synthetic retinoid. If you're on it and you add a retinoid supplement, you are just overwhelming your liver's ability to cope. It drastically increases the toxicity risk.
Right.
The same goes for anyone with existing liver disease. Their storage capacity is already compromised. Medical supervision there is absolutely non-negotiable.
We have to talk about pregnancy. This is an area where the consequences of getting it wrong are just so severe.
The stakes are the highest here, without a doubt. High-dose preformed vitamin A is what we call teratogenic, which means it is directly linked to causing birth defects. This isn't a theory, it's a well-established fact.
So that 3,000 microgram UL isn't just a suggestion during pregnancy, it's a critical safety barrier.
It is an absolute barrier. Most prenatal vitamins are formulated very carefully to provide a modest, safe amount, usually around 800 to 1,500 micrograms, and often using more of the carotenoid form just to be safer. The guidance is crystal clear. Get your vitamin A from your diet and your approved prenatal, period.
Which means women really need to be cautious about some of these unregulated fertility booster supplements or high-dose skin products, which can have huge amounts.
Precisely. If you are pregnant or even just planning to be, the takeaway has to be this. Unless a doctor is specifically telling you to and is monitoring you, you must not exceed that total daily intake of 3,000 micrograms RAE from all sources. When in doubt, food is always safer than a high-dose supplement.
Okay, so let's bring this all home for the consumer. You're standing in the supplement aisle. How do you use this knowledge, this RAE and IU literacy, to make a safe choice?
You have to demand transparency from the label. First, look for the form. Does it clearly say retinol, palmitate, or beta-carotene? If it just says vitamin A, I'd put it back. Second, look for the exact potency listed in micrograms RAE. If it only lists IU, you have to be ready to do that quick conversion in your head, remembering that 1 RAE is about 3.3 IU of that preformed type.
And you have to track the total. That seems like the hardest part because you're already getting some from your food.
That's the whole game.
Yeah.
If you're eating a decent varied diet and you take a standard multivitamin with, say, 1,500 RAE, you're probably already in a great spot. You do not need another separate 10,000 IU retinoid pill on top of that. That's the fast track to blowing past the UL.
Are there any indicators of a quality product that isn't just trying to sell you on a massive dose?
Yeah, look for quality certifications, things like USP or NSF. That suggests the product has been tested for what it claims to have. Also check the formulation. An oil-based carrier is a good sign for a fat-soluble vitamin. But fundamentally, just choose a lower dose option unless you know you have a diagnosed deficiency. And never, ever combine multiple high-dose retinoid products without talking to a professional.
So this has been a fantastic deep dive. It's clear that vitamin A is vital, it's magnificent, but the risk of toxicity, especially from the preformed retinoids, is real. We have to use that 3,000 microgram RAE per day limit as an absolute ceiling. And remember that the truly life-saving benefits of supplementing are for targeted deficiencies, not for general use.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we know the carotenoids from food are the safest source because the body has that built-in safety valve. And we know the preformed retinoids carry all the risk. So maybe we should start viewing a varied diet, one that's rich in those colorful carotenoids, not just as a source of nutrients, but as the primary safest strategy for vitamin A intake. And we reserve the preformed supplements only for specific monitored clinical needs. Which leaves you with a question to think about. In a world where we're supplementing everything, is the best strategy for safety often the one that relies least on the highly concentrated synthetic pill?
Your diet is the ultimate safety mechanism, and knowing how to read the label is your best defense. Thank you for diving deep with us on vitamin A.
My pleasure.